go ahead and share the slides. All right. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. As the first request for participation, there'll be multiple that follow after this one. So today we are here really to talk about Seva. So for those who don't know what that word means, we're going to explore it today, but the most basic definition that people use is service. I'm going to be throwing out questions from time to time, and there'll be 3 ways to respond. One, which hopefully everyone will use, is just to unmute yourself and respond to the question. The second way is you can type a response into the chat box on the right, and I'll be able to see it. Anish will be helping me if I miss any of those responses. I think the third way will be when we do the polls. And so when we do the polls, the question will appear in the bottom right. I'll probably read out the question and you'll answer. When I close the poll, everyone will be able to see the collective group's answers. Okay. This particular discussion was born from a couple of the YAs in our community here in Boston who really felt like the service that we were doing as a Psi community wasn't service. It wasn't helping people. It wasn't reaching its maximal impact. Some people felt that some of the things we were doing were actually harming the people that we serve. This question really reached a fever pitch around the time that we went to Haiti. That's now actually 10 years ago that the earthquake in Haiti happened, and the US Psi organization sent relief there. Many of us, myself included, participated in a medical camp. Upon return, a couple of months later, there was this massive cholera outbreak in Haiti. And I got an email from one of the YAs in our community that said, what did we do? What was the point of our project? Did we actually do something good for people? Or did we do more harm than good? Was it Seva? Was what we did Seva? And so I struggled with this question. Our community really struggled with this question. And hopefully this study circle or this discussion that we're going to have together helps to find a space of common ground between the idea of what does it mean to do Seva and what does it mean to be effective in our Seva. I want to start by getting to know the various people here on the thread. So you have 2 choices. I hope you choose the first one, but if you choose the second one, it's totally acceptable. I'm going to ask just for your name, your Psi Center, and a service project you participated in that didn't quite feel like service. All right, so that's your name, the center you're from, and a service project that didn't quite feel like service. You can leave out names, hopefully. Feel free to unmute and respond or type your answer into the chat. The time is yours.
Hey, this is Kabir Sai from the Fremont Psi Center. I think Sandwich Seva, that was probably one that I didn't really feel like was Seva.
Tell us more.
Yeah, it felt like a very monotonous thing. Like, it was obviously for a good cause. It was making sandwiches for the homeless. But something about it was like, it just didn't feel like it was done properly. It was kind of like we're giving this solution for a pain point that we don't necessarily relate to properly.
Yeah.
And the execution wasn't exactly, I don't know, really. It was just, the execution wasn't up to par with what I would expect.
So execution, relevance, sounds like it wasn't very exciting for you.
Yeah, it was pretty lame.
I'm glad this is a safe space for us to share what we need to share. All right, who's next? Thank you so much, Kabir Sai.
Hey, Sairam. I'm Sai Gopani or Sai. I'm from
Hey.
CSJ. Yeah. Hi. I'm from CSJ, Central San Jose, and I have a similar one. When we were in SSC, we were, you have Gab, but they would lock the kids up in like a separate room and make us fill the boozy packets. And we would just be locked up, unable to get out, filling these vibhuti packets, um, while aunties like kind of screamed at us to chant the Gandhi. So I didn't feel like that was a Seva project.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like there are other kind of labor related concerns there as well, but we don't have the time to delve into those. Thank you so much for sharing. Who's next? And kind of just to revise or review that idea, it's something that someone else told us to do. It wasn't really volitional for us, and that kind of can make service a little stale. All right, who's next?
Saram, my name is Niranjan from Sacramento. I have been a service coordinator for our center for 4 years, about 5 years ago. So I think I am the service activities we do are actually in one way or the other meeting the needs of the people, whether they look forward to certain things. I think what we need to improve is when mostly people are from the same country, I mean from Indian or Eastern background, so that the understanding of seva and our service, and they kind of mix it with like certain things that may not be right here, right in the sense it's also the cultural difference. So I think we need to be mindful of those things, and then that might become a hindrance between us and helping our fellow brothers and sisters in from this society.
And also adding to what he said, earlier when brother Seva, I understand in India when we do service, it's more of like Narayana Seva is giving food, and that aspect it was necessary, but especially when we adopt that into here, it becomes monotonous. I think that we need to analyze the aspect of what is service and why we are doing it, and perhaps do it with more, feeling. So the purpose we need to analyze. I think that's what's important when we do service, and the feeling of Narayana Seva should be, understood clearly.
So two more incredible ideas. One, culturally sensitive, culturally relevant seva.
Yeah.
So, do we sing Bolo Bolo Samil Bolo in the nursing home? And is that effective for those individuals there? And then the other big question is, why are we doing what we're doing?
No, just to make myself clear, I think that's still fine, because for them it's music.
Yeah.
They may not need to know what's being sung. It's just that the way like the organization volunteers interact and the way they present themselves, and there is a gap between the recipients and, I don't want to say recipients, the other side.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
So this is Ravi. I'm from Central San Jose. I have one observation that and I usually take part in the the shelter programs and all various service activities. What I've observed is that when you're saying, when it gets into this mode where some people say, shut up and do what I'm telling you to do, that sort of just like some people take it in, okay, yeah, this is fine. He's just telling it because he's anxious or tensed. But some people just lose that interest in the whole activity. And I've observed that in a lot of service activities where people's anxiety like flows in to the whole activity and spoils the peaceful nature of the activity. And the way I have tried to cope with it is, yeah, this is a great opportunity for myself to be grounded and practice being calm and learn what not to do in an activity, right? But
Yeah.
this I've seen that there you cannot point out one activity. I don't want to pinpoint one, but I've seen a lot of such things happening where people just say, "Shut up and do what I'm telling you to do, and don't ask questions." You're just messing up things by asking questions. So I feel
So what I'm hearing is, when there are personalities at play, sometimes service can feel less service-like when various personalities interact. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, this is Sandeep Riker from Tri Valley Science Center, Dublin, California. And yeah, to be frank, I have not come across any of the services which I feel were dumb. And one of the main reasons is I always make sure to ask people around why it is done. So that really kind of puts me into the perspective. And I kind of echo what Niranjan brother also said. So it depends on the cultural background and all that. But I think whenever we go for a seva, we have to make sure why we are doing it. Like, what is the purpose? What's the ultimate? Where does your end product go to? So if we all can make sure, if we can get to know what happens to your end product, I think there is no service which we'll feel is kind of dumb and unnecessary. Thank you.
We can take a few more.
Saikrishna, this is Kritika from Central San Jose. I would say the sandwich seva, like Kabir has mentioned, as well as any sort of burrito service along the same lines, just because I feel like I crave a little bit more of reflection behind why we're doing what we're doing, the intent, the intention behind it, as well as I like interacting with people this is actually helping. And for me, Sandwich Seva or even sometimes the burrito service hasn't really had that portion where you're able to go in and meet these people and maybe experience the joy that they get from what we give them, and that human touch. So I would say that's why those have felt a little bit monotonous or not or where I've connected to them.
Awesome. Yeah. So there's a humanness in Seva, and sometimes it's easier to feel it in certain projects, and sometimes it's a lot harder to feel it in other projects. I think Saikiran from Fremont Center chatted into us and kind of really joined that brainwave. Any activity with minimal interaction with people is it finds it difficult to experience service.
Hi everyone, this is Vignesh from the San Francisco Sai Samiti. I primarily participated in the Sandwich Seva up in San Francisco, which is done in the Tenderloin area. So I'm not sure if Kritika and the others are referencing that one or not, but I've been to that quite a few times and I found that to be really good personally. And also been part of the other Seva activities that have happened in the San Francisco. So I don't have personally any experience where I can say that I couldn't connect with it. I felt like the Seva that was done there was something I could personally connect with. So nothing really to report out. Krishna.
Yeah.
And team.
Did you feel like it was an effective service project? Like it was the best way to serve that particular population?
I personally felt that what we were doing there had an impact on the people. I do not have any kind of there are obviously improvements that can be done, and it's more from how can we ensure that what we're giving them isn't misused. I think there are certain aspects around that which have been discussed a few times, but overall I feel like the activity has been going on for many months, and it's having a positive impact in the sense that even on very cold, windy days or rainy days, the people are there to receive the sandwiches and the oatmeal that we give them, and it's been beneficial in my opinion.
Anyone else have any ideas?
So
Thank you so
I'm
much, Vignesh.
Vishwanath from Central San Jose Center. So I happen to be part of a service project. This is involving the municipal rose garden cleanup. We had to do some weeding out activity and everything. But I've also been, as Brother Ravi Kishan stated, we've also been part of homeless center service lunch projects as well. So to me, that was more fulfilling because at the end of the day, when we actually went to the rose garden, we found more number of volunteers had actually turned up. So, and in the end, I felt like I was just like a cog in the wheel, just doing some job which didn't really connect to it as service. So in computer science, there is a term called triaging where there are like more P1 or priority issues compared to rose garden cleanup, which I thought. So many people who are actually really suffering, who really want academic help, or people who are homeless. So that for me demanded more attention compared to, or that gave me more fulfillment compared to cleaning up like a garden where I could not relate to that kind of service activity, or I couldn't relate to what Swami's teachings were at that point. I'll let my wife Rasika share her thoughts on that.
Hey, hi, this is Rasika and I'm from CSA Center. So I don't have an answer for the third question. So whatever activities, whatever sevas I have done, I was able to connect with that. So I don't have an answer for the third question.
Okay.
But yeah, Krishna, we are actually looking forward to so one request or one message. If anybody can pitch in and tell me their ideas. So how we could actually apply Swami's principles, or what Swami has actually said for any activity that we try to do. That I think that connects sometimes, as Brother Ravi Kishan said, people, their anxiety kind of steps into the picture. So at that point, I think Swami's teaching should actually be like a trigger which just comes in, or we should be reminded of his teachings at that point as to why we do Narayana Seva or what is the purpose of doing it. So I think once we have that, applying it at the right point and juncture is very important, what I feel.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Can I add on to what he just said?
Oh, sure, of course.
So actually, one idea that I had was that for per each event or program or seva that's being initiated, it'd be good for like one person from the group to go into Satya Sai Speaks or a discourse and just pull out what Swami said and how it relates to what exactly is happening. I think now we have all the tools, they're all there. It's just people just have to go out and really find the right quote for the right time.
Yeah. I'm hoping that some of the quotes that we go through in this session will answer some of the questions that have been addressed, or at least get the ball rolling. I've cited the chapter in Swami's discourses that a lot of this material comes from, and so you can go back and read it in its totality later on. There's going to be two portions of this particular workshop. One will be understanding what Seva is from Swami's teachings. And then the second is understanding the role of service projects. If anyone else has any idea, I think Lakshman from Fremont also chatted in, and there was two things that were mentioned. One idea, we do what we're comfortable with, which may not necessarily be what the people who are being served need. And secondly, sometimes focusing on long-term goals, what we call sustainability of our seva. So is it important for this individual to have one meal, or is it important for this individual to have access to housing? Which of those services and needs can we fulfill in this moment? I want to get to all of that in this discussion, so I will move on. I just want to make sure anyone who hasn't had a chance to introduce themselves that wants to gets to. And I know there's a lot of discussion about which sandwich project. A part of the goal of this exercise is to, this exercise in itself tells you how much, some of these things are really personal to us. And sometimes it's hard to talk about service projects because if I came up with the project and you're telling me that it sucks, it kind of feels personal. And removing that from the equation is going to be a huge part of what we discussed today. So I'd love to get there. One of the things one of the things Manisha just sent in from Central San Jose, the idea of learning our lessons. You know, something doesn't work out the first time we do it. Do we go back in and do the same thing, or do we do something different? And again, we'll be getting into that. All right. Anybody else have anything to share, or do I have the collective permission to move on?
Hey Krishna, it's Dheeraj. Could you hear me?
Yeah. How you doing, man?
Okay, I'm doing good. I'm Dheeraj. I just recently moved to Boston. I'm actually from the St. Thomas Virgin Islands Science Center, but now I'm a part of the Brookline Center in Boston. I just wanted to bring up like even the service activities that we do in St. Thomas. It's a small island. We go to old age home and we've been doing that for we cook for them, right? And we play bingo and we spend time with them. We've been doing that for like years. And I think what happens is that you know, we're doing like there's like value for each service activity, but I believe as a sign group we have much more potential to grow in quality of service. And like what happens is that I see I see a trend in like our conversations that, you know, we're doing Seva that is too comfortable. We're not really pushing ourselves. And how often are we looking for new and better ways to serve? It doesn't mean that we have to stop, like, let's say we don't have to stop doing these service activities. I'm pretty sure the people at the old age home really appreciate our presence and they enjoy that. But, just putting a full stop and just only saying, oh, we do service and this is our service activity and we're done. That's kind of like a cop out. And so that's what I wanted to bring up for this conversation.
Thank you, Dheeraj. I may have sent the link to a few Boston friends. Sorry, team. All right. So let's move on to the first question. So this is just to get a sense of where we're all at here. So let me open the first poll. Really, it's personal, it's anonymous. So, really feel free to, say how you feel. Let me open the first poll here. All right. Should pop up on the right side here. Maybe I'll read it out loud for us. Since it can be a little hard to read, you might have to extend on your browser to read.
Krishna, can you also increase the time limit? It's set to 1 minute. Is that okay?
We'll really just have to really think through an answer quickly. How
Okay.
important is service to you? And so the question here is, how important is service to you? A, it's my number one spiritual path. B, it's important. I prioritize this over other forms. C, it's among many spiritual practices that I do. D, I prefer other spiritual practices over this one. Or E, I prefer doing bhajans, which is basically seva, so I'm good. You got 9 seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4,
5 people.
3, 2. All right, good. Oh, they're giving you an extra 20 seconds. Wow, for the people who, man, that's real kind. 10 seconds for those of you who are still submitting responses. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Can everyone see those responses? So it looks like for the majority of the group, this is one of many spiritual practices. There is, still about a quarter of our group here today. It's the thing we care about the most. So again, this is just to get a sense of these are the people who are participating in our service projects and these are their wishes. And, that's something to respect as well, is that what we're doing may not be everyone's cup of tea. And that's totally acceptable. Anyone have any thoughts about, the results of this particular one? If you felt like other spiritual practices were more important in your life, what might those spiritual practices be? Mostly be the people who answered C. E?
I did like Dheeraj. I actually chose like A, right? It's my number one spiritual practice. It doesn't like for me, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing that the most, but you know, it comes in line with the other ones, but I give it the most value in terms. So maybe I should have picked two, but you know, that's my perspective.
All right, that's awesome. And then from Team Rasika Prakash, devotion was one of the important spiritual practices. Harsha, it's hard to figure out, you know, what's seva or what is service. If it's, you know, it depends on what you count as service. Helping at home, helping at the center, helping ourselves possibly. I added that on. You didn't say that.
So I'm Ritesh here from the Fremont Center.
Yeah, go ahead.
Some of the other things are just chanting the name and study circles are definitely two of the other practices that are interesting. Or
Yeah, that's great. All right, I'm going to hop to the next question. All right, slightly more controversial. Again, the answers are completely anonymous. Hopefully, if you take it personally, you have a space to process those feelings. All right. Next question. All right, I just opened the poll. Again, 1 minute on the clock. The service projects at my center are consistent and regular, innovative and exciting, stale and repetitive, ineffective and counterproductive, limited and unsustainable. You got 40 seconds.
seconds.
5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, and it's giving you that extra 20 seconds for the stragglers. All right. Like, that's everybody. Can everyone see those results? So it looks like the majority of people felt that the projects at best were consistent and regular. A very small percentage found the projects innovative and exciting, and an equally small percentage of people really found the projects kind of stale and repetitive. As people who participate in these projects and as people who organize some of these projects, you know, which category do we want our projects to be in? Which qualities would we ascribe to the service projects that are ideal?
I mean, I think so. Some of us do grandparent service, which is, I think someone had mentioned this. I think they did this in Boston, where so we sing songs to the elderly, and it is consistent and regular. But I think, you know, as somebody who does a lot of the song picking and stuff, it would be really cool for it to be more innovative and different, just because the songs that we sing are all kind of the same. And they're like all songs like, you know, You Are My Sunshine, or, you know, God is Here. So they're like all like songs about God, but they're not, I don't know. I think if we got something like the Beatles or something that they enjoy, that might be better. That would be more innovative as opposed to just being consistent and regular.
Okay. Yeah. So you want something to be able to excite you. You want something to be able to drive you to do the project. So it's good if we're able to sustain consistent and regular projects, that's awesome. The next step might be, how do we make this exciting for everyone? How do we breathe life into the project beyond showing up?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for over like 15 years, which is crazy. I've been doing this since I was a little girl. Um, but I think it would be cool to make it more innovative. Something.
All right. Any other thoughts? Thank you so much. Okay. So keeping these things in mind, we're going to shift our focus a little bit into what Swami has to say about some of these topics. So I will close that poll and out of the way. All right. Awesome. So Sai Kiran, messaging in, we all want innovative and exciting projects, but it takes a lot of time and effort. I completely agree. It's very resource intensive. You have to have one person who's going to volunteer to pick the songs and make them exciting, but not so exciting that the members can't sing them, but not so boring that the elderly people are yawning while you're singing. There's a lot to think about. There's no easy answer, but we have the privilege of getting to address these issues and actually work on them and make a good experience for everybody. All right, I want to kind of get over to what Swami has to say about this topic. So let's see here. This is on the concept of Nishkama Karma. It has many translations. This is the translation from the primary source, so I chose not to change it. But I think everyone has different definitions for some of these words. I'll read it to you. Nishkama Karma, or selfless service, is the fragrant flower of altruistic love. It is not to be performed for the satisfaction of the person rendering the service or the person at whose bidding it is done. Man should regard Nishkama Karma as the purpose for which he is given life, or she. This feeling should flow through his very nerves and bloodstream and permeate every cell of his body. Whatever be the work we do, we should do it as an offering to God and for his pleasure. I want to focus on one aspect of this particular quote. There's a lot here. We're going to explore a lot of it as we go throughout. We should regard selfless service as the purpose for which we're given life. This feeling should flow through our nerves and bloodstream and permeate every cell of our body. My question for the group here is, can you think of a time where you've experienced this? Is this a reality for you? And so I want us to think a little bit, maybe take a few seconds to reflect on it. And if you feel comfortable sharing, what's a moment in your life where you felt this? Is it possible to feel this?
This is career side. Yeah, actually, this is really hits home. So there was one time I was at a grocery store and there was an elderly woman in her car and she needed somebody to help her with groceries. And so there was a person who was watching, and so he's like, hey, like somebody needs to help this lady. And so I guess he like actually pushed me towards her, and I guess sort of just assumed I was going to do it. And so when I picked her up, like I basically felt that like in my body, like there was like an energy, like because I was like serving her, like I just kind of felt this energy. And so that was like, I did a very small seva, but I felt it. Like I really, really felt it.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
So Siam brother, this is Pavitra. So a couple of us, we after finishing our SSI YLP project program, we had to do a project called SciPacks, and which is serving the homeless population. But SciPacks is every center does it, essential goods. But what we decided was to go and actually talk with the homeless population. And when we did the project, what we saw was, even if they have even if they don't have it, they will point out to the other person who's sitting there and say, hey, that, go and give it to them. So that kind of a feeling, I mean, we would just randomly go and serve and come back. But when we actually spoke to these homeless service people, something that we think do strikes, I don't know what it is called. Maybe it is that selfless service aspect, but more than that, that connecting, that so as Swami says, you see God in others. You ultimately feel that when you're doing that service. So that was one point when I actually felt, and all three of us in our group, we also spoke about it and felt that, this is something we should do continuously instead of just going and giving and heading back. We actually sit with them and talk to them and understand their needs and why they're doing that. So that was something, we still continue to do. And I felt that.
And one thing is, I think to me, it's personally being involved with the Satya Sai organization and the functions and the activities. Because when I'm involved, I'm not thinking I'm doing this and that. It's just that so into that task, there's no thinking, oh, this is going to benefit me. Because as Swami would put it, Nishkama Karma is basically also not expecting the fruits of the actions and or detaching the ownership of fruits of action. So it's just being so present in that moment. And I think in that case, any activity we take up with that intention, that attitude, it becomes a selfless service.
Thank you. Yeah. Other examples of times where you've really felt this feeling permeating your nerves and bloodstream and every cell of your body, feeling like, this is what I was created for. I also noticed Pavitra and Niranjani switched places. Thanks for keeping us on our toes.
Saram, this is Rishma from the Fremont Center. So about 2 weeks ago, I volunteered at the Ashland Free Medical Clinic with Dr. Joe, and we had a patient there who usually we're serving, the Latinx community, but we had a patient who was from Yemen. And so obviously he spoke Arabic, and that was not something that we had translators or interpreters for, because we rarely see someone who is from that background. And it just so happened that because I'm one of the first people that usually patients will meet, I was helping him, and we called the Kaiser hotline, and we talked, we found somebody who could speak in Arabic, and we were able to help him. But the process took a couple of hours out of the clinic for me to do, but it just made sense to do because that's part of protocol. But also because he seemed very worried because he was a refugee, and so he was scared. And so even though I would hand him off to the next person who would be able to translate or do the next procedure, I stayed with him through the entire time. And at the end, he almost had tears in his eyes. And he said, what I think because I've heard some of my other Muslim friends say something like that, I understood what he said at the end, and that was, may Allah bless you in this clinic. And I thought that was profound because, I didn't expect that he would ever say something like that, or, for the clinic or anything. It just seemed so right. Yes, the entire clinic is going alongside the guidelines by Baba, but still to see something like that, to be able to hear it and even share that with Dr. Joe and the team, that was pretty powerful. And that's when you realize why Baba brings people. I mean, he heard about it at the mosque. So why Baba brings people there, and then what he does through you. I think that was definitely something that worth sharing for this question.
Thank you so much. Yeah. One of the things that really ties these stories together is almost something serendipitous, but of course, not necessarily just serendipity. Something we didn't expect, but was this unintended, really beautiful result. And I think many of the stories that are being shared really resonate with that. I know this is not really just my forum, but I will share just a quick story. A couple of days ago in clinic, I had a patient come in, and she was scheduled for 7 o'clock. My 7:30 patient showed up early, and my 6:30 patient didn't show up. So basically, when I saw this patient, I had a full hour of time available. From the moment she walked in, she started talking about all of the challenges she was facing, from a child with severe physical disabilities to another child that was acting out and running away from home, to challenges financially, to challenges with housing. And for about 40 minutes, I don't think I said a word. I may have, appropriately responded to things she said, but in that moment, at the end of it, she was so happy. She gave me a hug and she said, "Thanks for listening to me. Not many people listen." And I really started to go down this rabbit hole of what are all of the things that allowed me to be present for those 40 minutes. The fact that the next patient showed up early, the previous patient didn't show up. The fact that I was in a mental space to listen instead of trying to, see as many patients as possible. The fact that I trained where I did, the fact that I grew up with the values I grew up with. If I really dig deep enough, it's, my parents, fled their country as refugees just so that I could spend 40 minutes with this one person. And for me, that, I gave myself chills thinking about that moment. And I think that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people, these unexpected moments that just feel like, holy crap, this is what I came to Earth for. And I want us to keep those moments in mind because that's what we're seeking. That's that feeling, to sustain it as long as possible, to live in that energy, in that space. I mean, it would be incredible. So finally, to the question at hand, what is Seva? People's thoughts? My patience is infinite.
It's Ritesh again. I think Seva is anything where you're serving as his instrument. It doesn't have to be defined. It doesn't have to benefit you. It doesn't have to even seem to benefit anybody else. Just being there in that moment as he would expect you to be, I think that's what Seva is.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. There's a mindfulness component.
Just to continue on the same thought, it's perhaps something that you do not for the direct benefit of yourself, but perceivably for someone else's benefit. I think to me, it's if we are talking about physically and then just the service wing aspect of it, I think it's something that we can do by following chilling on desires and saving time, energy, money, and food, and then utilizing those. And if we can share that with, in other words, sacrificing our things that are in excess for us, and then utilizing that to benefit the society or the brothers and sisters that are around us.
Awesome. I also want to make sure we are looking at the chat box. An act of love, an expression of care, trust, and love. A state of being, surpassing doing or feeling. A state of being where we inhabit in constantly and being constantly an instrument for signing. Some really powerful ideas.
I think
this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I totally agree with everything that was said, but I think Seva is also for yourself a lot of the time. Like you think that you're doing this big act for someone else, but a lot of the time it transforms you. I've had a lot of experiences where I'm like, if I'm doing something, I'm like, oh wow, I'm doing some big thing, I'm helping somebody, and then you realize, wow, like no, I've realized how important and how precious life is, and you learn a lesson from it. So I think the bigger aspect of Seva is really that it benefits you, it transforms your life.
So something self-transformative. Other thoughts? I know there's thank you for all the participation so far. I know there's a couple of people who haven't had the chance to share as well, so please feel free to hop in. I'm hearing from Kabir's side, not having any intention or feeling towards the outcome, leaving it completely up to the ultimate decision maker. And then from Kritika, a selfless act of love towards yourself or others. What makes Seva different from other charitable acts? Or, how would you describe Seva in particular? If someone said, what qualities are you ascribing to Seva? Or what feeling do you have when you do Seva?
Saram, I think, sorry. When you're doing Seva, I think it's very important to know that there is the lack of distinction between the person receiving and the person taking, perhaps. In charity, there is always a very big point made about who is giving and who is not giving, for example. And keeping that in your mind is very important for Seva.
Thank you so much.
Adding to what Brother Ritesh said, I would say that giving and receiving is God. And Dharana Seva is Swami says, God is in you and God is in the other person as well. So I think I saw a picture where, when you're getting giver and the receiver should be at the same level when giving, so that understanding the awareness is that, you feel God and you're serving God. That aspect is there.
So I'm hearing Seva, there's an aspect of oneness between yourself and the other person that characterizes Seva. From Lakshman, service is something we do so we feel satisfied with the situation we are witnessing in front of us. That's really beautiful. That for anyone who knows the story of Abe Lincoln helping the pig in the mud, there's like a pig or something stuck in the mud, and he gets out of his carriage. He's the president, and he pulls this pig out of the mud. And when the other people in the carriage say, "Why'd you do that?" He says, "I wouldn't have been able to sleep tonight if I knew that pig was struggling in there." So it was really, for my own satisfaction that I did that service.
Yeah, and I feel when it comes to Seva, it's a more feeling of we and you rather than I. So that feeling of I should not be there, and feeling of you and we is important. So that I think is one of the aspect of Seva.
Thank you. One of the thoughts in the chat, the happiness you get, there's something selfish about Seva when we benefit from it. And then there's a like on that one. All right. So let's hear what Swami has to say. So the majority of the quotes from this discussion come from Satyasai Speaks, volume 15, chapter 31. And this is the quote here. Society is the coming together of people. Cooperation among people in society, motivated by spontaneity and by pure intentions, is the hallmark of Seva, or service. Seva can be identified by means of two basic characteristics: compassion and the willingness to sacrifice. I think a lot of these ideas the group came up with on their own, but it's obviously important to hear it from Swami directly. This idea of spontaneity, pure intentions. Spontaneity, I really think of Kabir's story where it was the most spontaneous because he didn't even know he was going to do it. It just happened. Compassion, the willingness to sacrifice. Let's continue in that same discourse. Let me tell you that nothing is impossible of achievement if an organized society is set on achieving it. Even liberation from material entanglement, or moksha, can be won through serving and promoting the progress of society. Through the sense of unity, the willingness to sacrifice, and the softness of compassion, all objects can be gained. So the Satyasai organization must move forward with hearty enthusiasm in the field of service to society. Any preliminary thoughts about this?
This is Kabir Sai. just real quick, I think Swami's life perfectly exemplifies this, like perfectly.
Yeah. How so?
Basically, see how many people have come together, right? And the reason they all came together is him, right? He formed a group of people who all can work in harmony and put away their own individual egos to basically promote the progression of society. Like that's, and so in his lifetime, I mean, that's what he did. And
Yeah. I think there's tons of examples of that as well. Other thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, I think the important thing is when we take Swami as an example, he basically led by example. So he taught and then he practiced and then he shared that, he preached it. So that's, you see that in him, you see him doing it. And I mean, not that he kind of grew people, just people got attracted to what he spoke, what he lived for, and then basically his uh, purity, that pure love.
There's an element of leading by example. So he lived it, and then we learned how to live.
I mean, similar in the physical way of how this organization grew into such gigantic organization in 120 plus countries.
Yeah. I have a response here for one of the earlier questions. Charity flows from a higher level to a lower level. Seva is heart to heart. There's no distinction between giver and receiver, irrespective of the receiver's situation. Serving someone because he's in need is Seva. Similar to what Sister Pavitra told us as well. So I'm drawing on these two quotes that we just read, and these are the 5 qualities that I pulled out of them, and I want us to explore them. So in these 2 quotes that I just shared with you, Swami talks about willingness to sacrifice, spontaneity, pure intentions, unity, and compassion. I think by exploring these 5 ideas, I think we'll be able to get a better understanding of Seva, because Swami is actually just saying these 5 qualities are the hallmarks of Seva. They're the qualities that define Seva. So I want us to jump right in. We kind of addressed this already. This is the idea of what are different words we use to describe how we serve each other. And I think it's definitely something to think about. My next polling question for the group: why do we do Seva? What's the point? What effect does Seva have on us? And with what attitude or motive should we be doing Seva? I'm going to try and open this poll. Why do Seva? These are definitely not the only answers available to you, but these are some of the options. Because it feels good, to promote progress in society, to please Swami, or for self-development. You got 40 seconds. Why do we do Seva?
There's a one comment saying that there's no all of the above.
Yeah, there would be less discussion if there was an all of the above. 8 seconds. 7, 6, 5. Right. So our group kind of weighed a little heavily towards self-development. I would argue, as Kabir said, all 4 of these are perfectly acceptable responses. Everyone does something for different reasons. I think we can find examples in Swami's literature where all 4 of these things are true. We've already read quotes that say at least 3 of these things are true. And so that really brings me to our next quote. I'm going to close that. Thank you all for your responses. So self-development seems to be kind of one of the important pieces. And so how? Swami says, service helps you to remove the ego. So do not pay heed to what others might say when you engage in service activities. When you're doing good acts, why hesitate? Why feel ashamed? Why fear? Did put an ellipsis in there. You can go back to the primary source and read the rest if you'd like. God will not ask you when and where did you do service. He will ask, with what motive did you do it? What was the intention that prompted you? You may weigh the seva and boast of its quantity, but God seeks quality. Quality of the heart, purity of the mind, and holiness of the motive. I just want to read that again. I think it's really powerful. And, you know, as much as we ask each other, you know, what do I like to do? What's the best for society? This really tells us Seva is above a lot of those things. God will not ask you, when and where did you do service? He will ask, with what motive did you do it? What was the intention that prompted you? You may weigh the Seva and boast of its quantity, but God seeks quality. Quality of the heart, the purity of the mind, the holiness of the motive. I want to just continue on with Swami's words on this. Offer service to someone in need with a full heart and experience the ananda that results. It need not be something big. It can even be something small or unnoticed by others. It has to be done to please the God within you and the other person. Within these 2 quotes, I think all 4 of the answers in this poll exist. There are elements of self-development. There are elements of duality, of pleasing God in others. There are elements of enjoying the bliss that results. So, you know, there's a million different reasons to do seva. I think it's important to acknowledge all of them. Many people early in the discussion said, why are we doing what we're doing? What's the point? So the first of these 5 qualities I want us to broach is purity of intentions. So our next poll question, what's the purest intention? And we can have a discussion around this afterwards, but let's try and approach the poll first. Purest intention, open the poll. Once again, you have 1 minute to answer. What's the purest intention? What Swami tells us to do? That which is for the greater good. That's that which originates from inside of us. That which promotes helping those in need. I guess I could have put none of the above in there, but you know, gotta have opinions. 20 seconds. Five seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Can everyone see those results? So a little bit more of a spread. I finally got a question that actually spreads out the crowd here. About a quarter of the group, the purest intention is whatever Swami tells us to do. About a third of the group, it's whatever we find inside of us. And it's still not an insignificant number, that which promotes the greater good and that which promotes helping those in need. So what are your thoughts as a group? What would you say is the purest intention? How do we even know what the purest intention is?
Siren, brother. I think spontaneously, like when you want to do a seva, you feel that need and want that something within will like tell you. And I think that intention is, Swami says, I'm within you and then I'm speaking from you. And that translates into prema, which is, Swami often says, when you do it with love, anything that, that promotes it to a higher good. So even for this, for coronavirus right now, it's permeating all over the world. But look at how much of devotees coming together, chanting for the greater cause, and that is itself is pure love, and for the welfare of the humanity and for the world at large. So I think whatever intention that tells us from within, that itself is most important. I think that I would say the C was what I chose, and I think I'm being open, but
Yeah.
something which I felt as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Other thoughts?
This is Kabir's side. So I chose the one that it's what Swami says, because I think everything that needs to be done, Swami has said in like a number of discourses, Satya Sai speaks, right? And now it's up for us to figure out, okay, this is what Swami said. How is it for me to do? And so obviously it takes a lot of removing in the process of trying to figure out what it is that Swami wants you to do. There's a lot of like removing the ego and just trying to figure it out, basically interpreting his words and then messing up along the way, seeing, oh wait, that's actually my ego. It's not, I'm not actually doing seva. I'm serving my ego here, and going back and forth with the teachings, and then see where basically it takes you.
I love it.
So honestly, I think it's Swami's words really.
Thank you. Yeah. So there's a sense of there's probably something objective that we're striving towards. We kind of have to constantly self-reflect, self-audit, introspect, and figure out, am I living in line with that message? Other thoughts?
I thought it's hard to say what promotes the greater good, but lean towards what's always striving towards promoting a greater good. We could be doing something at the best of our abilities, but that may not be enough, or we could be doing something that's not yet there. I think the important part there would be the intention would need to be something that we're constantly trying to improve, whether taking a step or not by itself is also a part of that step, a part of that process. So kind of trying to continuously weigh in, like if you're not doing the introspection part, then kind of, I don't know if it's just the intention, but the intention does need to be the best at whatever it is that we're doing. And for that, we need to constantly reflect.
Right. Right.
And all good points, but I think like all of these points are equally valid, right? Like sometimes you may not be reading a lot of Sai literature, but you have a voice inside of you that tells you that this is the right thing to do, and you do that. That's a pure intention in and of itself. You can help others, help anyone. There's a story about this kid who keeps throwing these starfishes that line up on the beach, right? It makes a difference to that one, and that one. I think we have heard that story before. So even if you do a small act of kindness, that intention is pure, and you don't need to be reading any side of literature to be doing that, right? It's just it's your own conscience. It's what helps anyone around you is a pure intention, and I think all of these points are valid, and I don't think any one is better than the other, and Swami is in all of us, like our sister said here. So it can come from within us as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I love that idea that we might be enacting Swami's teachings even if we don't even know what Swami's teachings are.
Also, I think it's compassion that comes from empathy. Yeah. And like sympathy is kind of looking down. Okay, these people don't have anything. Let's go and give a little hand. But empathy is putting ourselves in other people's shoes and try to understand what. It doesn't have to be materialistic. It could be just emotional, or it just maybe a friend that needs our shoulder, just to be in the shoes. And I think the so to me that purity comes from compassion, which is from
Yeah, awesome. Other thoughts?
To Vignesh's point, I mean, I agree too that all the points here are valid, but I said C as well, helping the greater good. And I think the intention is pure when there's no expectation, no selfishness attached, or even other negative emotions or thoughts associated with that action. But I think working towards every action being for the benefit of the greater good is what counts, like Shiza said. And for me, it's we're all connected, whether we realize it or not. And at the end of the day, like helping for the greater good also helps ourselves as well through that process.
Awesome. I agree. There's no one right answer, and that's honestly why I usually put questions with multiple right answers up there so we can talk them through. The greater good, it's so hard to know what that is, and I remember hearing from a speaker at a retreat once, don't tell Swami what's best, just say samastaloka and whatever is best will happen. Is it best that people, don't have coronavirus? From the spiritual perspective, how can we know? So we just say samastaloka and hopefully that energy makes it to the people who need it. I think that's controversial. In my role as a physician, I actually have to act in certain scenarios, and it's not enough for me to say, I'm just going to send some loving thoughts out there. So that's why there's no one, I don't know that there's one right answer to any of this. It's really context and situation dependent. Who decides whether our intentions are pure or not? It's not a poll, this one's an open response. Who decides?
I mean, I obviously think Swami knows whether our intentions are pure or not, but ultimately, I think it's our intuition that's within us that should tell you whether your intentions are pure or not. I don't think you need like an external person telling you that at all because they don't know really what's going on. But for ourselves, we should be able to distinguish with a little bit of awareness.
Yeah. Saikiran also messaged in, you just know it. You just know when they are or not. For Priya, it was, you look at your inner voice. Other thoughts, other people? Who decides?
Yeah, this is Kabir Sai. So I was thinking, I mean, we are like, I guess, individual soul sort of decides because that's why I guess we were born over and over again to figure out the purest intent, right? The reason we kept getting born is because we have these desires where our intentions aren't pure. So ultimately, the ultimate decision maker, who I consider to be Swami, he's the one coming in and really deciding. But then it's a level of self-reflection that we're doing on a soul level that slowly we realize where our intentions are not pure and able to move towards that higher level of purity.
So again, that self vetting process. So then who decides? Is it, am I hearing you say that it's you?
It's a back and forth of the individual and the ultimate, I would say. Jiva and Paramatma, like both, really.
So but in practice, that's a conversation in your mind.
Well, between Jiva and Paramatma, it's like we can't really define it, right? It's in a different dimension. It's beyond the mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Padmanabhan says, once you complete the seva, your feelings will reflect whether the intention is pure or not, and that gives you the answer. Other thoughts?
I think what we need to focus on sometimes is as the Swami says, antakaran shuddhi, right? So purifying the inner self. Why that's important is because sometimes, you know, we like, you know, someone said that you just know it. Well, some people, you know, and I could, you know, I know some people like this that think they have pure intentions behind an action, but then they're looking for a fruit, you know, they're looking for some kind of reciprocation from Swami, like, oh, I did this, I did that, and they don't know, you know, and I think so that's like they don't know that their intention is to receive something in return. And so actually, I don't think it's about who decides, but it's about just constantly working on yourself and like purifying your inner self. Then after a while, that purity will come. But I don't think there's a definite answer, like, you know, if we can decide our intentions are pure or not, because there's a lot of selfishness just in our daily lives. We think we're doing things with pure intentions to, let's say, benefit our family members. We might be harming someone else on, you know, that we don't know at all, and that action seems pure to us because, oh, you know, I'm helping someone with this, but you may be doing, you know, a disservice to someone else, you know.
So I'm hearing from a couple of people that the results of our actions determine whether our intentions are pure or not, because, you know, we don't really have control over how people respond, but if they respond poorly, then the intentions weren't pure.
So this is Kabir. So I have a quick anecdote. I'm not sure, so it's not don't quote me on this, but it was either Swami or Ramakrishna who told a story about I think it was a Brahmin who was hosting a Narayana Seva, and he fed somebody who ended up either killing a person or a cow, not sure what it was. And the person who hosted the Narayana Seva took the karma on because he fed the person, and he didn't know, right? He was doing a Narayana Seva, but because he had fed that person, he took on the bad karma of that murder or killing, whatever happened.
Does that mean someone's intentions weren't pure?
So the person who hosted the Narayana Seva probably had the best intentions in mind, right? He was like, I'm doing Narayana Seva, right? But then the results, right, was based on whatever karma was there, right? For whatever reason, that person showed up and ate his food, right? And so based on that, the host was the one who incurred that karma, but he had no clue. He probably did have the best intention, right?
So to belabor this a little bit, does that mean that those intentions weren't pure?
No.
And this actually is the fundamental question. You know, like, I went to Haiti, I prescribed some hypertension medications for like 2 weeks. I came back, I felt super good about what I did, and then there was a cholera outbreak in Haiti because some tourists defecated in some river in Haiti and caused like an epidemic. You know, does the fact that what we did could have been harmful to those people make it so that my intentions weren't pure going into Haiti? And this is the fundamental question around a lot of people's service projects, and that's why I want to spend a little bit of time on it. Thanks for indulging me, Kabir.
Yeah, so I think it's like the best way to look at it is like it's really not in our control. To a certain extent, it's like whatever karma, we're just like cogs in a machine, right? We're just kind of going along with whatever the story is happening. So there is a level of us having to do our part and trying the best to do it with the pure intention, but ultimately it's up to the creator in a sense, or Swami, right, who will make the decision of the outcome. It's really not up to us in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I guess there's two. Oh, sorry. I know someone wants to speak. I'll let them speak. Like the Pavitra Niranjan.
Yeah, just one thing I just want to say that I don't think we can apply a single rule as to which is the, how do we do the, how do we determine the pure intention? Because sometimes there is a normal notion that you have to do service at your own expense, even at your own expense. But sometimes if we are hurting ourselves, and it is okay to kind of stay back and take care of ourselves. That is also pure intention. It's not always being right, but doing the right thing. Sometimes when we do the right thing, we have to go a little unconventional. Sometimes, and that is, I think, the intuition or the gut feeling is going to determine what to do at that right time.
Yeah.
So Harsha actually says, I guess intention in itself is not sufficient. It has to combine with discrimination.
Sure. And I love that idea. It sounds like, there's two pieces here, though. One is the intention with which we do the action, and then there's what the action and its consequences actually are. And those are two different things. What I'd like to kind of pull us to is, how do we figure out whether what we are thinking is the right thing, the pure thing, the unfiltered thing? And I heard a lot of people say self-inquiry, introspection, self-auditing. I want to offer some other ideas as well. Just looking at the time, I may skip over this idea. Oh, you know what? We have time. So this is from for my psychology and psychiatry training. This is Kohlberg, who talks about 6 stages in moral development. Basically, what he says is, how do we decide what's morally right as we develop through the ages? At an early stage, obedience and punishment. If I do the wrong thing, I get a punishment, and that determines whether I did the right thing or not. Self-interest. Did it help me when I did it? Did I, when I was hungry and I ate, did I feel better? And that drives our actions. I won't go into every single one of these. You can explore them in your own time. I want to focus at the top of this pyramid, or I guess I didn't make it a pyramid, but whatever. It says universal ethical principle. What Kohlberg meant when he said that, he actually took Gandhi as an example, and he said, people who operate on an internal sense of values that end up being universal across cultures and across people, but they operate constantly from that state. So their agreements with other people, society's rules, how we choose to punish and reward things do not influence their decision making, but instead a set of universal ethical principles guides their actions. And that was the highest level of intention in this process. So I just want to offer that. And then I really want to focus on Swami's words on this. And this is really for me, one of those life-changing quotes. It may not be a surprise to many of you, but when I first read this was really challenging. So Swami's talking about different stages of wisdom and awareness. And the final stage is the master stage. He talks about the other ones in the rest of this passage, so you can go back to it if you'd like. The 4th stage is the master stage. Realization that the world is beyond redemption by human effort. That one can at best save oneself by trying to reform the world. That it is all his will, his handiwork, his world, himself. Along with this dawn of jnana, or wisdom, there must also dawn the will to direct all activity in light of that vision. When you realize that he is the innermost reality of all, you can worship one another with as much fervor as you now employ when you worship an idol. There's so much here. I want to read it again for us all. The 4th stage is the master stage, realization that the world is beyond redemption by human effort, that one can at best save oneself by trying to reform the world, that it is all his will, his handiwork, his world, himself. Along with this dawn of jnana, there must also dawn the will to direct all activity in light of that vision. When you realize that he is the innermost reality of all, you can worship one another with as much fervor as you now employ when you worship an idol. How do we feel about this idea? The world is beyond redemption by human effort. So then why try? Why do anything? What's the point? The world is beyond redemption by human effort.
So Kabir Sai here. I I guess just going back to the Puranas and throughout history, right? Avatars come in a time of need, like when there's a problem. Only when there's a problem, then humans sort of inquire within or really call out to this external force to come down. And so it's a combination of that problem having to come, and then also the people realizing that it's not within their hands to solve the problems, that it's beyond their capacity. And that's when they start to call and sort of energize, in a sense, come together, form unity, and then call that higher force to come down and solve the problem.
Yeah. I love that. I think there's something about intention in here. Harsha, I'm really glad you commented on that. So the first half of the line is the world is beyond redemption by human effort. But the second half of the line is we can save ourselves by trying to reform the world. And when this wisdom comes into us, we start to act in accordance with this intention that maybe the world is beyond beyond redemption by human effort, but I'm going to try anyways. I'm going to try because at best I'll save myself by trying to reform the world. I think that's really powerful. Just me?
No, for sure, I agree. Like it was never about changing the world, or it wasn't ever about the world in the first place. I think in the micro examples that we take about us doing something here and there, it's just a very limited space. But as I referred to the concept earlier, it's not about what's the actual outcome or anything external that's happening anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think, Harsha, you also kind of commented, it seems selfish, but also Seva is about self-transformation. I think what we're asking for is, action, and that action has a lot of benefits to the self. I don't know if I consider that selfish, but, it's just what Swami is saying is a reality. You will save yourself by trying to reform the world. You will save yourself by doing this work, by doing this Seva. Any other thoughts before I move on from this quote? Thank you all for bearing with me. I don't know if I could do that.
I think diving to the deepest point of this in the end, where it says, he is the innermost reality of all. I think it all dials down to surrender, right? In actuality, our service, our giving, receiving, all that. If we go down to the smallest level of everything is given to us, including this body, breath, everything that we have is not of our, like we don't own anything, right? The Swami's given this to us. God has given us the opportunity to serve. So in all, if you let go doership and surrender and basically become, like, we've heard everyone saying this, we become his instrument. That itself, I think, then detaches us from, just saying, saving oneself is selfish. Actually, nothing is really yours, right? Everything is Swami. So once you surrender, there's no self, like identity, that you attach to that I, it's gone. And therefore, then you detach yourself from that idea that you're saving yourself. You're actually saving everyone else, because you all are one.
Awesome. Thank you. Other thoughts? Anyone else want to share? Okay, so that's purity of intentions. That's one of our 5 categories here. I want to focus on another 2. It's willingness to sacrifice and spontaneity. I want to group the 2 together. And once again, opening the discussion to the floor, what's the difference between acts of kindness that we do from convenience and Seva? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I think there is a difference, because a lot of the time you do acts of kindness because you have, it's on your way, like you're going to pick somebody up. But if it's completely out of your way, I think that's Seva. Like if it's, stop, like if you have to go out of your way to do something to help somebody, or that, it's not convenient for you, I think that's seva as opposed to just an act of kindness.
So there's an element of offering my resources, which is sacrifice. And if I don't feel like, yeah, I have to give something up in order to do it, then, maybe it's not really seva, it's just another duty on my list.
I exactly. It's like I'm gonna do this because it's a kind thing to do, as opposed to, well, it's going out of my way, and I don't like, I might not have time, but I'm still going to make time for this.
Yeah. An example, I'm walking down the aisle in the airplane. This is several months ago, I promise. And there's an old lady standing in front of me in the line, and I, without even asking her, pick up her suitcase and I just put it in the overhead bin. Is that seva?
It's a really kind thing to do.
When I'm in the campus where I work, thank you for answering that. Another example, in the campus where I work, we serve a massive population of people who are homeless or have some form of housing instability. And I'll be walking out of the hospital, and we don't have a ton of convenience stores in the area, and someone will say, I'm really hungry. And I think, like, my first patient is waiting. I really need to cross the street and get over there. Should I take a quick detour to Dunkin' Donuts and get them something? Or do I just go? I'd say 25% of the time I stop and do stuff. I buy food. 75% of the time I say, hey, I'm really sorry, I'm actually late to where I'm going. I can't stop. Are those seva? Or one of those not seva? How do we know? What makes it?
So you said that there was another patient waiting for you while you were trying to serve this person?
Does that make the difference for you? Is that the distinguishing piece between seva and not seva?
I think that if you're causing harm to someone else while you're trying to help someone else, then that's not seva. That's just, you're telling yourself you're helping someone, but you're harming someone else. I think seva is done when, like Swami says, help ever, hurt never, right? If you're only helping and you're not hurting in another direction, whether it could be hurting yourself too, maybe, like some people may be doing way more harm to themselves by doing some kind of seva. Is that really seva? Like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
I hear you. I would argue that anytime I do something, it's going to cause harm to somebody else, because it's time that could have been spent doing anything else. Time that I'm spending going to Dunkin' Donuts is time that I'm not chanting Gayatris for coronavirus.
Yeah, but your responsibility, your dharma, right? So you're working. Swami's giving you a role, and if you're not fulfilling your role, and you're like, so for example, a patient's waiting for you, and now you're doing something that's extracurricular, then I believe then that's like you're kind of thwarting your responsibility in the name of seva, right? And I think that has to be.
Yeah, earlier, I agree with you. That is definitely something I'm trying to reason out, and I don't know the answer, but earlier I gave you the example of sitting and listening to a patient, even though I may not have had the time to. That could have been called my dharma. What if I think my dharma is the fact that Swami put this person in front of me who's hungry because I had the ability to feed them? Isn't that my duty too?
Yeah. So I see what you're saying there.
Why me in that moment? Why did I get asked in that moment? Why did I choose to walk that way to clinic?
I think it's important to, in this case, refine the intellect, and slowly we can figure out, really. I think it's not something that we really will ever know until that point of realization, but slowly we can refine our own intellect to figure out what is duty, what is seva, and the distinction. And then based in that moment, make the proper choice that will lead us to that next level,
But I can't wait that long. The person's in front of me right now, and they're asking for food, and the patient's waiting for me right now.
I think what you have to understand is that we are not doing anything. Yeah. Swami's doing everything. So if the need will arise, we are not the ones that are feeding these people. If this person is hungry, we do, even if we do a small prayer, say, Swami, you know, right now my duty, my dharma is to go to the patient. May you please find a way for this patient to get some food. So Swami will do it, you know. And I think the fact that we attribute ourselves, we put ourselves so on a pedestal, like, oh, I am doing service. If I don't feed this person is not going to get food. I think I have a really strong opinion about this. Is like this guy went to Swami for an interview, and you know he said like, Swami, I'm looking for a job. I can't find a job and all this stuff. And Swami told him like, you see that mountain over there? There's an ant on that tree. Who do you think feeding that tree? I mean that ant on that tree. Like, who's feeding that person? He's like, it's me. So therefore, you don't need to worry about what's going to happen. You do what you can do best, right? And so I think that's the kind of like set of principles I follow, is that if what the best that I can do is a prayer at the moment to say, hey, Swami, someone please give him his food, give this guy some food, and I'm gonna do what I think is right. I think that's the highest form of service.
So, you know, there was two ideas there. One, that, you know, that the idea of refining our intellect, thinking about, you know, what Swami has laid out in front of us. But at the end of the day, I have to make a decision. And I'm hearing one option is to offer a prayer. I'm sorry, I can't do the thing that you need me to do, but I can do the thing you need me to do. I have the means. The Dunkin' Donuts is right next to clinic. I mean, should I stop by? I will have to wait in the line, I guess. Should I give them $5? Maybe if I just give them $5, then I get to do both sevas and I get credit for both.
Yeah, but then you give him the $5. And sorry, I'm playing devil's advocate. If you give him the $5 and you go back to work and you keep doing this, right? You keep doing this, and then you get fired from work, and now you're the person asking for $5. You know. So I think there's a line that you have to set for yourself where you preserve, you self-preserve. And Swami doesn't say you have to, you know, let go all your belongings and go in the forest, or do seva for your whole life. Swami says have a fine balance. And sure, maybe one time you'll do it, maybe two times, but then the third time you're gonna think to yourself, oh damn, like I've really been missing out on patience, and then you'll come into this inner conflict, and then you won't know how to resolve.
Yeah. So I love that idea. Any other thoughts? I want to extend what Dheeraj just said, but I want to make sure other people have the chance to contribute on this question. I saw a couple of messages in the chat as well. Our heart should melt at the sight of a problem, and this should prompt us to do the seva. We only have as much freedom as that of a tethered cow. Swami pulls our strings. He decides which moment is best. That moment, what is the best action for us in that moment?
Also, brother, adding to what you just said, you also said that giving money, right? And I remember I read somewhere that Swami doesn't, even in a service or whatever we do, we should not give them money, but give them food if that's something that we can do out of the way. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, awesome. I purposely threw that in there just to see, just for the fans of that concept. I want to argue that, and if anyone else has ideas, please jump in.
I did have some thoughts.
Go ahead.
And I think the distinction being drawn here is perhaps between dharma and what is seemingly seva. And I think it's not as simple or as straightforward as a blanket yes or a no. I think it's what you spoke about earlier, that it's years of your experiences, it's whatever shapes whoever you are, that kind of creates the moral compass that decides what you want to do. Like in this example, this person's hungry versus a patient's waiting. What if this person was burning and the patient's waiting? Like, which side are you going then? Suddenly the variables change and the thought process could change or could not change. I don't know. That's truly for you to decide what's where you stand and what's good for you. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong here, which also implies there's no right either. It's like you do your best.
Yeah, awesome. I want to move on. That actually reminds me of a really quick story. When I was an SSE student, it doesn't matter who she was, but she was an SSE teacher, and she was coming to the retreat, and she showed up on Sunday. She seemed absolutely radiant. You know, there was this just glow, and I was like, wow, you seem so happy. I really missed you at my workshop yesterday. I would have loved to have seen you there. And she said, oh yeah, you know, I left yesterday morning, but on the way I noticed this little baby bird on the road with a broken wing. And so I stepped out of my car, I took the bird into a box, and I took it back home and nursed it back to health yesterday. And I remember at the time I like rolled my eyes a little bit because I said, like, are you serious? Like, that's so random. And I had a workshop and I could have really used your backup in it. And you saw a bird on the street. And you kind of got distracted there. Now, I mean, who's to say what her dharma or responsibilities were? She didn't sign up to show up to my workshop. You know, she was totally free to do as she needed. And so maybe this example is a little different, but it's so funny to me because duty and seva just presents in these ways that we can't know. And there's an incredible spontaneity to what she did. And I felt that energy from her. You know, you can say what you want about it, but I really felt that off of her the next day, that there was something so powerful around her. And I think it was her following her intuition. I want to make the argument that our willingness to sacrifice is determined by our self-confidence. Now, what does that mean? It means, how much do we believe our needs are being taken care of? One of our cultural programs about 10 years ago now was a documentary, and we went around to different religious groups interviewing people on what does it mean to do service in your religion. And there was a Christian gentleman who said, in Christianity, we believe God takes care of all of our needs. And therefore, we are left available to take care of the needs of others. If I believe God is taking care of my needs, I'm free to take care of the needs of others. So asking ourselves the question, how much do I really believe I'm taken care of? I think helps us answer the question, how willing am I to go out of my way to do seva? If I don't have the financial resources, I can't really support people financially. I don't feel like I have time, which is a resource. I can't spend time helping other people. This really gets to this idea. I'm going to give a psychology example, and then of course I'll use, Swami's extension, Swami to extend that idea. Maslow, back in the 40s in psychology, came up with a hierarchy of needs. And it was only once those needs were met that we could really reach our full potential in giving to others. So if I believe I'm still hungry, I don't have food for myself, the last thing on my mind is going to be, how can I do a burrito seva for the local community? Personal safety, if I don't feel safe, if it's dangerous where I'm going, if there's a chance that I could be a victim of assault or violence, I'm not going to really be in a mental space to help other people because I'll be constantly worried about my own safety. Maslow identified these needs in a ascending order. Once I feel like my needs are met, I also have a need to belong, a need to connect with other people, a need to feel loved by other people, maybe my family, maybe my Sai Center community, maybe my community outside of Sai Center. If they don't let me feel like I'm a member of that community, I'll keep looking for that. And I won't necessarily be in a place to help other people because I'll still be looking for people who can support me. And self-esteem, which I think we can all work on in a variety of ways. When I don't feel like I can love myself, how can I love others? And that's, also something that Swami talks about. Swami's version of this is this analogy that we have to have confidence in the capital S self. The self, which is Atma or Paramatma, whatever word you want to use to describe our soul, our innate divinity. Self-confidence, therefore, is the idea that I believe that all of my needs can be taken care of by my highest self. When we rely on that self, we experience contentment or self-satisfaction, the feeling that all of my needs are being taken care of. And then only can I freely engage in self-sacrifice. Another way of saying this idea is, when I was in college, I felt like I had a lot of free time. So when people wanted to talk about what was going on in their lives, I had an endless number of hours. As time has progressed, the number of hours I have to do that have really dwindled. And now I feel like, listening to everything you have to share at times when I'm tired really feels like you're robbing me of my energy. And it's because I don't really feel like I have that energy anymore. And so in the time where I was feeling truly filled, like my cup was already filled, I was able to really fill the cups of others. But when I can't feel that way, it's really hard for me to fill the cups of others. Do you have any thoughts about this? I think someone did chat something in here. The world is about giving and taking. It's all about karma. If you ever did something for someone, if you ever think you did something for someone is extraordinary, it's not because everything is supposed to happen according to his plan. The whole point of doing Seva is for yourself. Instead of being caught up in the cycle of karma, practice the journey to connecting with him. And along with yourself, bring the people around you and help them so they can connect in their path.
Krishna, I can kind of resonate with the idea which you mentioned, where sometimes there are times when, due to professional challenges, you have your own challenges to deal with. So your cup is actually like kind of full. So it becomes very difficult to actually focus on or think about sacrifice at that point or going all the way out, because half of the time, as you mentioned in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, you're constantly struggling to find time to strike a balance with your families and due to your office pressures and all of your deadlines. So sometimes it becomes too difficult to handle. So, and only when you are freed up with all of that work, sometimes we are actually able to devote our time and energy towards other seva or other activities. I would definitely say that being in a challenging place like US, that's one of the chief constraints that I think every family or every Sai devotee or family is going through. So we're all constantly striving to achieve that balance. So sometimes the balance is not possible because of a lot of work pressure or deadlines as well.
Right. Something that kind of connects what Dheeraj and Kabir Sai had shared and what you had said is we're just trying to figure out how to prioritize our resources, how to balance what we have and what we can give, how to balance what we're supposed to do and what we are available to do with the extra energy that we have. It's really hard to navigate.
So, brother, adding to what everyone was saying, this auntie of mine told me that everything that we do is for God. We shouldn't separate anything, like from work to other Sai organization to any seva, because ultimately Swami wants us to have our life part and parcel with everything, connect and see divine in all what we do. So even I used to feel that way as well. I used to get drained sometimes, and sometimes, that totally took my energy away. And I finally decided, and I kind of, by Swami's grace, understood that, when we are doing something for work, it is also for him. How to better ourselves in that work. How do we do, Swami, in the beginning of the day, I would say, Swami, work through me, think through me, do through me. And when I start thinking like that, even any act of, if someone comes to me for something, I know that Swami is sending that person for a need, and I'm also learning from that person. Everything becomes a seva. So I started to prioritize it like that, and then I saw my energy not draining, but actually seeing a positive aspect to it.
Yeah.
That's something that I learned, and I like to share that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Other thoughts?
This is Kabir Sai. Can I share my screen for like a second?
Yeah, I believe you can. You just
So I've actually thought about this a lot. For one of the projects that I'm doing right now, basically, how do you ascend Maslow's hierarchy? And I think Swami really gave us the answer in his logo. And so this is like something I've really thought, how in my personal life will I ascend it? And it's basically this, just breaking everything down to the fundamentals and just reflecting on actions and consequences that are constantly happening to slowly ascend the hierarchy.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Can I share back?
Yeah, I just.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that. And so this idea of, I don't know how to help answer the question of how do we prioritize? How do we know? There is this idea of, there are various ways in which to serve God. One thing I've been toying with personally recently is that some of the happiest times in my life were where I really took care of my needs first so that I didn't have the anxiety and worry about whether my needs were being taken care of or not. That's controversial. Just to kind of review what we've discussed this far. So selfless service is the purpose for which humans are given life. Our intentions can only be judged by self-inquiry. We can't really know another person's intentions. The world is beyond redemption by human effort, but one can at best save oneself by serving others. And our willingness to sacrifice in the act of seva is determined by our feeling of security or self-confidence. So I want to ask the question, we're basically defining seva using these qualities. Seva, someone said, is the state of being. It's the way we approach our actions. It's not necessarily which action we take, but it's the way we approach our actions. Approaching our actions with these 5 qualities of compassion, sacrifice, spontaneity, purity, and unity allows us to engage in seva. So if seva is an attitude or a way of life that we judge by self-inquiry, by introspection, by conversing with our inner Atma, then is there room to improve our service projects? Any thoughts? If this is just, if it's everything is beyond redemption by human effort, if it doesn't really matter what we do, just as long as we do it with a certain attitude or state of being, does it matter what we're doing?
I think a part of the attitude that you talk about there is wanting to be better. I mean, by that I just mean that by wanting to improve yourself and in the process the service project.
Yeah, I hear you.
I think for me, the answer to the question is that, okay, like are you willing to improve your situation, like your service activity? Are you willing to do more? And if you do have the capability to do that, then sure. If you don't, then I think, okay, what you should be happy with what you have.
Yeah. Thank you, Dheeraj.
Hi, this is Sanjana. It's been a great conversation so far. Thank you so much for all the inputs. I had a slightly different dimension to add to this. I think passion, and this might be coming from a very spiritually underdeveloped mind, but for me personally, passion plays a huge role. Every service activity that I've been involved in, I don't think I evaluate and see, is this actually the most is it actually the best thing that's going to impact in the biggest way, but it's just something that if I'm passionate about, because if you want to give a percentage of your time, if you're tired, if you're caught up with other things, the most important thing is if you're passionate about it, you will always find the time for it. That's personally how I see it. And the same way, passion feeds into innovation as well. If you're passionate about the work you do at work, you will tend to be more innovative, more invested in what you do, and you'll try to think of different ways to do it and the best possible way to do it. So I think if we're all invested, if we're all passionate in a particular seva activity that we do, we will always strive to make it the best possible. And I've seen that personally in my life as well. Not just here, I just visited India last week, and 3 hours after I landed in India, I was there. I was teaching 30 kids that I really love, and I'm very invested in them because I'm really passionate about it. So for me, I think passion plays a huge role in seva, in the way I look at seva.
Thank you so much. So caring about what you're doing sounds like a huge piece of what you shared, Sanjana. And thank you for sharing that idea. This really actually brings up a situation that I've thought about. One of our YAs brought to this forum when we first did this particular workshop. He said he was on his way home from work, and every day he would see a homeless person sitting there. He had some work lunch, and they had a bunch of apples left over. So he took an apple, and on the way back, he dropped the apple off at that gentleman's, where that gentleman was sitting. The gentleman took the apple. He continued walking. He realized he forgot something at work, so he turns back. The man is no longer sitting there. There's an apple with one bite taken out of it on the ground, and it's just sitting there in the mud. My friend said, how ungrateful. What was the point of that? And so this idea of there's a loving intention there. There's something spontaneous there. You know, there's a sense of compassion. There's a willingness to sacrifice, to stop by this person and do that. I think that there's a sense of how do we meet the needs of the people we're trying to serve while still capitalizing on this energy and passion that we have. And so, Sanjana, I'm really glad you brought up what you brought up, because using that energy to innovate, I think, is really where I want this conversation to go next. We do have a comment from Sunil. The conversation focused on self-reflection and intention, and we are really working on ourselves. One way to improve, perhaps we should always pair our projects with a short study circle or affirmation to reinforce this and the center group. Love the idea. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's always important to have a forum to discuss why we're doing what we're doing and what effect it has. So thank you, Sunil, for that. And I think some of your co-participants also feel similarly. So I want to, again, go back to what Swami says about this idea. Since you're humans, veils and fog, weeds and worms infest the mind. Doubts and fears haunt your work. But be vigilant against the onslaught of these. Strive every day, faithful to the ideal you've set before yourself, to improve your Seva activities along pure, unselfish, and sacred lines. So in short, yes, and I think Sanjana really beautifully said this. Bring the energy, love what you do, but also think, what can we do differently? How can we use this energy differently? How can we use these resources differently? So that really raises the question, or that really raises this distinction that I want us to create. I think this is a helpful distinction, and Swami kind of makes this in some ways, not explicitly. Seva being the state of being with compassion and sacrifice, spontaneity, purity, and unity. Service projects being these forums where we create spaces for people to experience that feeling in their nerves and cells of their body. The forum for Seva. But this forum has to be evaluated. It's not enough to say, hey, we did pasta, everyone ate the pasta, we succeeded. Maybe someone in the crowd didn't eat the pasta because they have diabetes and pasta spikes their blood sugar. Should we be addressing that? Do we need to worry about that? Is feeding the group of people that's assembled important? Or are there other skills that we can work on? These are the questions that service asks that Seva does not necessarily concern itself with. When we're looking at our service projects, we're trying to say, what's the impact? Are the people who are in need, who we believe have these needs, actually having these needs? Are we actually meeting those needs? I want to reiterate, because this actually came up in the very beginning of our discussion, that by asking these questions, we're not judging anyone's spiritual practice. I think this is the fundamental struggle that, at least in my brief experience in Sai Center, has been the greatest obstacle to creating innovation and creating new experiences for people in service projects, is that, I'll throw my own father under the bus in this story. He is extremely dedicated to the service projects that we've been doing for several decades in Boston. But it also means that when I question them, his gut reaction is, well, so you're saying what I did for the last 30 years wasn't good enough? And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what we are looking at now has room for improvement, and that's okay. Everything has room for improvement. I have the energy to implement that improvement, and I wanna work on it. When we're in the nursing home, I want to sing songs that remind these residents of their childhood, of their families, of their own culture, of things that they love. I want it to speak to them in a way that's meaningful to them. When I go to the soup kitchen, I want to make sure that that person feels like they didn't just get a meal, but they got a conversation. They got a sense of belonging. They got a sense of, hey, I see you as a person. And that's just more than just putting food on their plate. It doesn't mean that putting on their food on their plate is a bad thing. It just means that there are other ways to do it. And so I want to ask the question, how do we improve our service projects? In the time we have left, I'm going to open a poll around this. Looks like we have about 10 minutes left, so I think we should be able to at least answer this question. How do we improve our projects? So I'm going to open the poll. We got 1 minute. Some of the answers are a little long, so I'll read them. How do we improve our service projects? A, by discussing and reflecting amongst ourselves as a community, by reaching out to experts in the field where we are trying to do service, by soliciting feedback from participants and those being served, or D, there's nothing to do, we just let Swami do his work and whatever is best will happen.
So, Siren, brother, adding to what you just mentioned.
I do want to hear from you. I do want to hear from you. I just have 25 seconds for people to respond, and then we'll definitely hear from you first. Sorry. 20 seconds. Oh, actually, it looks like everybody who's going to respond. Oh, one more person threw their hat in the mix. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pavitra. I apologize.
Adding to what you were saying, how do we improve our projects? I looked at one of the videos for Grammar Seva, which Swami does it with the students in November. And he said, when we do the projects, we also have to think of how we do it. For example, the materials that we buy, right? For the convenience sake, sometimes we purchase for less price, but Swami has told the students, it seems, to analyze, would we wear those? Would we, so when we are giving something, we should also realize to ourselves if we would wear those, or if we would cook and eat such food, and then do the seva. So he wanted to self-reflect and impose on ourselves first before we even do that seva. And at the same time, he also said, we should also not spend too much. So how do we bring into practice also one of the things that Swami has told the students for during the Grammar Seva? There's a video to watch. It's on YouTube.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I can send the link later.
Yeah, please send it into the chat. Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome. Other thoughts? So let's look at our voting results. So the majority, half the crowd felt that the best way to do it was to solicit feedback from participants and those being served. Okay. About a quarter of people felt that we should reach out to experts, and another quarter felt we should just discuss amongst ourselves and figure out what works and what doesn't. Any thoughts on which way the best way to proceed is?
This is Kabir's side. I was actually previously working for a medical device company, and one of the processes we go through is design verification and validation. So we build a product based on the needs of the customer. So for what I was working on, I was related to stroke intervention, and so the problem is people are having ischemic strokes, right? And so how do you prevent that? So it was basically finding a solution, right, and testing it with the patients, and then seeing what went right, what went wrong, and then improving the solution. And I think that's important for us to, when we do Seva, that we go through the process of not just doing the same thing over and over again, but figuring out where are we going wrong, how can we improve efficiency, and how can we properly deliver it to the people on a micro and macro scale as well.
Yeah. Thank you. So there's a real, there's work to be done on the other end as well, is what I'm hearing. And it's okay. It's work that we can do. I want anyone else have any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of them, really. Because
You cracked the code. You cracked the code for my entire presentation.
right, because you have to be able to ask feedback from other people, like from the people you're serving and from the people who are participating. But you should also have people who know like what they need, right? Like you need to have experts. If you're going to treat malaria, you need to know how to treat malaria, right? The other thing is like you should also reflect on yourself, how it made you feel and how, the service project, like what your takeaways were from it. And then also ask Swami, right? Because obviously what will happen, he'll do, right? Or like whatever he wants will happen.
Yeah. Thank you. Other thoughts? All right. One more Swami quote, and then we will move on to the very last portion of what we have. I'll just skip one segment, just given the time. I think this is a really nice quote that kind of gets at all of the above ideas. Again, all three answers answered in this one quote. This day and tomorrow, people with years of experience will be telling you the means and methods by which your Seva activities can become more beneficial to a larger number of deserving people. You'll also have group discussions on these topics. Exhibit A. Confer among yourselves in a meaningful way and arrive at some proposals for bettering your service programs. Later, I shall resolve any doubts that arise and advise you not only for Seva here and now, but also for attaining peace and joy forever. I shall converse with you and reward you with Ananda through my blessings. So yeah, let's talk to each other. Yeah, let's reach out to the experts. Let's figure out what the right thing to do is, what the best thing to do is. Is a weekly medical camp in a developing country the best way for us to use our resources? I don't know, but let's ask the people who do now. But then also at the end of the day, let it go and offer it to Swami. And so I think, Saigopan, you did say a lot of those things, and they are also the answers that we put in the multiple choice here. I did want to talk about a sense of unity and compassion. I am going to unfortunately push through this. Just to say that service projects are a forum for individuals to engage in Seva. And so when we ask Swami, whom do we serve? The members of our organization must be ready and eager to help students, the sick, the poor, feel that this is the work that pleases me. Spend your days and years in activities that help those in dire need, and thus make this human existence of yours worthwhile and fruitful. I mean, there's just so much gold in here. I feel like when you get the chance, just go back and read through some of these quotes. They're really powerful. So my last question is kind of around the idea of, all right, let's pretend that we are the participants who are delivering a project. What would you do? So you're going to create a brand new project. What kind of questions would you ask? And so I'll come back to this poll in a second. I want us to say, what questions do you ask right before you start building a service project?
Who are we going to serve? What's the purpose of what we're doing or what we're trying to do?
Who are we going to serve and what's the purpose? What's the need that we're going to fill? Other thoughts?
How do we solve that problem or serve that purpose? Like logistics, technical logistics.
Logistics. How many people will it take? How many people do we have? How much money will it take?
Is it short term or long term? Sometimes you can do it for a short term, but if you want to achieve a long term impact on that service project, how do we do it on an ongoing basis, or how do we make sure that the projects last that long to serve the community, for example?
Yeah. Awesome.
Or even begin with saying why am I building a sustainable service project. Starting with why am I doing it, and then in return that whatever value it brings to me, I could reciprocate that to the service project.
Yeah, awesome. Other thoughts?
Who do we need to consult? What experts do we need to bring in? If you're doing like a medical camp, you obviously need doctors, right?
Right. We're doing a medical camp. Do we have doctors? If we're, doing a food service, have we talked to someone about nutrition? We're doing an elderly Seva project. Are we talking to the nursing staff that interacts with them every day and knows what they actually need? Are we talking to the patients themselves and figuring out what they need? Or are we just assuming, hey, if I sing to you, you're going to feel better. So I'm going to sing to you now.
Also, I feel that we should measure the outcome. There should be a specific metrics to measure the outcomes. Maybe it could be feedback or like feedback from the people those we are like serving. That would like help us to like improve further.
I love it. Yeah. So, were you able to eat the food? A simple question like that. Were you able to eat the food? Sometimes people will say, I'm lactose intolerant, so you put butter in the pasta. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I want to do one practical example, and then I'll close with a Swami quote. So this is our last poll for the day. Once again, thank you. I don't know how you sat through this. I barely sat through it myself. So this last question is,
So one way. Oh, sorry.
Before you go, I'm just going to read this quote. So volunteers and clients disagree about the taste and nutritional content of a meal you're serving at the local soup kitchen. What would you do? Immediately change the recipe? Construct a survey and administer it to multiple participants over the course of 6 months to get a sense of what people want? Keep doing what you're doing. There's always going to be mixed reviews. Check with other soup kitchens and groups about what they cook and how clients respond to those meals. Which of these would you do? 21 seconds. Change the recipe, administer a survey, keep doing what you're doing. Everyone's a critic. Or check with other people and see what they've done. Check with other people who do this project. 10 seconds. 8, 7. I think there's another 20 seconds. After this time runs out, I can see a lot of people have some thinking to do. 20 more seconds for participants to submit responses. 15, 14, 13, 9. All right. Results. All right. So no one said keep doing what they're doing. All right. One person felt we should immediately change the recipe. Most people felt that there should be a survey constructed and we need to administer it over time. And about a third of people felt, let's check with other people and see what they're doing. What do you all think? What do you do when you get feedback about a service project?
I think with something like this, because like the need is to serve right now, it's really, I think the idea of doing a survey is really great, but it's not very practical because there are new people coming in, right, into the soup kitchen or whoever you're serving, they have to be instantly gratified. So I think maybe a combination of like one and even checking with other people, like other soup kitchens and how they do it. I think that's probably the best bet because you want something immediate, you want something effective, and otherwise it's going to take a lot of time.
So what I'm hearing is you're hungry now. You don't have 6 months for me to administer a survey and get all the feedback. Let's figure out what you can eat right now, but also let's simultaneously figure out what we can be doing differently to account for people such as yourself.
Definitely.
I know nobody voted for 3, but there are times where 2 people give you exactly the opposite feedback. One person will say, hey, this meal was perfect. It was amazing. Don't do anything differently. and another person will be like, I am not eating that. You can't always please everyone. And, like I said, I don't know what the answer is in that scenario, but I think it's something for us to think about. I want to close with a couple of questions that we can ask ourselves, even about projects that are happening now and about new projects that we can commit to. You already brought a lot of these questions up. I just want to make sure we cover them. And then I will end with a Swami quote and pass it back to leadership. When we're thinking of a service project from scratch, we want to ask, what are the skills and talents of the members in our area? We're going to take on a massive music project if no one actually knows anything about music. Is it okay to take on a cooking project if it's a bunch of college students who have never cooked for themselves in their life? Are we ready for it? How many people can contribute to this project? How many people can this physical space hold? If 20 YAs show up, is there space for 20 YAs in the soup kitchen? If 8 YAs are required, do we even have 8 YAs that can show up to this project? What needs are being met by our project? When people talk about nursing home projects where we sing, they say, what are we doing for those people? But there are needs that are not just physical, they're emotional and social and spiritual. Is our project culturally relevant or sensitive? So, I'm comfortable singing about Shiva in front of you. Are you comfortable about me singing about Shiva in front of you? How can we make our projects more sustainable? Excuse the not vegetarian analogy, but teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime, right? So how do we give people skills that can last? How do we create new projects? In this organization, it's really hard to find ways that are both appropriate financially and also take on projects that have large financial strain. Something I think is worth discussing within I don't think it's something we can address here, but it's worth talking to your Sai Center leadership about. How do they do it? What's the right thing to do? We don't fundraise in this particular organization. So then how do these projects come forward? Who's responsible for it? Does our project promote progress for society? Swami said our service activities should promote progress for society. Are we actually doing that? So I want to end with this quote. You who belong to the Satya Sai organization, every one of you must become a Sevak, or one who does Seva, eager to help those in need. When the Sevak becomes the Nayak, or the leader, the world will prosper. Sairam, everyone, thank you so much for your time. This is really awesome. I was really not sure how this forum would work out. Thank you to the regional leadership in Region 7 for giving me this opportunity to do this. I love doing stuff like this, so if you have any questions about how things went, or if you have feedback, like you want to tell me this was terrible, I'm totally open to that. And so please reach out to me. You can get my contact information from your regional reps. Thank you again. I'm going to pass it right back to the regional team.
So Nilana, if you're talking, we're not able to hear you.
Oh, Sairam, sorry about that. Sairam, everybody, this is Sunil. So I just wanted to take a moment, to thank Saikrishna. What could have been an afternoon where we were sitting by kind of swiping our phones on the latest updates or letting our mind go willy-nilly has turned out to be a really lovely afternoon where we've been able to focus our minds and use technology for positivity and come together to really improve ourselves. So Saikrishna, thank you. Thank you for being such a great facilitator. Thank you for combining examples from your field of expertise, psychiatry, with Swami's quotes. Thank you for bringing the group's thoughts and energies along with you, allowing us to share examples, incidents, even a slide in one case. And thank you for approaching it all with a great sense of humility and a great sense of practicality, such that we felt very much like this was happening. This was happening in real time, in real life, with examples that we could use on a day-to-day basis. So again, thanks from all of us at Region 7, such a fruitful conversation, engagement. And thank you for leaving us with the gift of reflection. We're going to take a lot of this in, and I'm sure that the energy that we're taking in is going to ensure that our service projects are infused with Swami's ideas and thoughts on Seva in the future. So thanks so much for it all. Sai Ram.